My husband Oswin lay dying in room 304, machines beeping his final heartbeats, while I stood in the hospital parking lot listening to my son's voicemail for the third time. "Hey mom, can't talk right now, boarding my flight to Ibiza. The guys surprised me with this trip. Tell dad I'll visit when I get back. Love you." His voice was so cheerful, so carefree, like his father wasn't drowning in his own lungs 3 floors above me. I pressed my trembling hand against the cold brick wall, my 74-year-old knees threatening to buckle beneath me. The March wind cut through my thin cardigan as I stared at my phone screen, at the Instagram notification that had just popped up. Jareth had posted a selfie at the airport, designer sunglasses, that cocky smile, a champagne glass raised to the camera. "Ibiza bound. Time to live a little," the caption read, with 12 hashtags about freedom and living your best life. My husband of 52 years was suffocating on fluid in his lungs, and our only son was celebrating his escape. I wanted to scream, but my voice died in my throat. I rode the elevator back up to the ICU, each floor feeling like another year of my life collapsing. Oswin and I had given Jareth everything, paid for his fancy business degree, helped him buy his first condo, covered his credit card debt more times than I could count. We'd sacrificed our dream retirement in Arizona so he could establish himself in Chicago. And now, when his father was dying, when I needed him most, he chose a beach party with his corporate friends over family. The elevator doors opened with a soft ding that felt like a funeral bell. Nurse Patricia met me at the ICU doors, her face grave. "Mrs. Calloway, you should come quickly. His oxygen levels are dropping." I rushed past her, my orthopedic shoes squeaking on the polished floor. Oswin's room smelled like antiseptic and death, machines breathing for him because his body had forgotten how. I took his cold hand in mine, his wedding ring loose on his skeletal finger. "Jareth's coming soon," I whispered, another lie to add to the collection. "He'll be here soon, my love." Dr. Brennan entered quietly, his clipboard pressed against his chest like a shield. "Mrs. Calloway, we need to discuss next steps. His kidneys are failing now. Without intervention, we're looking at 48 to 72 hours, maybe less." The words hit me like physical blows, each one stealing the air from my lungs. 48 hours. My son was posting cocktail photos in Ibiza, and my husband had 48 hours left. I nodded numbly, unable to form words, unable to process that I was about to lose everything that mattered. That night, alone in our empty house, I opened my laptop with shaking hands. Jareth's Instagram was a slideshow of betrayal, him laughing on a yacht, dancing at a beach club, toasting with beautiful strangers who meant nothing. 23 new posts in 6 hours. Not one text message asking about his father. Not one phone call. I clicked on his profile, studying the face of the son I thought I knew, and realized I was staring at a stranger. Then I saw something that made my blood run cold, a comment from his girlfriend Ashlyn that said, "Finally free from family drama. Enjoy every second, baby." And Jareth had replied with a heart emoji and "best decision ever." I slammed the laptop shut, but the damage was done. What would you do if your child abandoned you in your darkest hour? Could you ever forgive them? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to hear what happened when Jareth finally came home. You won't believe what I had waiting for him. I spent that entire night in Oswin's study, surrounded by the ghosts of our family history. Photographs lined every wall, Jareth's first birthday, his college graduation, that fishing trip to Minnesota where Oswin had taught him to cast a line. My husband looked so strong in those pictures, so alive, not like the hollow shell attached to machines downtown. I pulled out the old family albums, my arthritic fingers trembling as I turned pages that documented a love story 52 years in the making. We'd been so happy once, all 3 of us. When had everything turned so cold? The morning light found me still sitting there, my phone vibrating with another Instagram notification. Jareth had posted a sunrise photo from his Ibiza hotel balcony, Paradise Found. The caption read, with a string of palm tree and sun emojis. Meanwhile, I'd received 3 calls from the hospital during the night. Oswin's blood pressure had crashed twice. They'd had to resuscitate him once. Our son was watching sunrises over the Mediterranean while his father fought for every breath. I screenshot every single post, something dark and purposeful growing in my chest. Evidence. I was collecting evidence. I drove back to the hospital through early morning traffic, my old Honda shaking at every red light. The radio played love songs from the 60s, songs Oswin and I had danced to at our wedding, at anniversary parties, in our kitchen on quiet Sunday mornings. I turned it off, unable to bear the memories. Patricia was waiting when I arrived, her eyes red-rimmed with exhaustion. "He's been asking for Jareth all night," she whispered, helping me into the visitor's chair. "I told him your son was on his way. I hope that was okay." Oswin's eyes fluttered open around noon, cloudy with morphine and dying dreams. Is Jareth here yet?" His voice was barely a whisper, each word costing him everything. I held his hand, feeling how thin his skin had become, how his bones pressed through like he was already halfway to skeleton. "Soon, sweetheart. He'll be here soon." The lie tasted like ash in my mouth. Oswin smiled weakly, believing me because he'd spent 52 years trusting every word I said. "Good," he breathed. "Need to tell him. I'm proud." My heart shattered into smaller pieces than I thought possible. Dr. Brennan pulled me aside that afternoon, his voice clinical but his eyes compassionate. "Mrs. Calloway, I need to be direct with you. Your husband is deteriorating faster than we anticipated. His organs are shutting down systematically. We can keep him comfortable, but there's no coming back from this. Do you have other family coming? Someone to help you through this?" I thought about Jareth, probably lounging poolside with a Mai Tai, and something inside me finally snapped. "No," I said clearly. "No, I don't have anyone else. Just me." That evening, I called Jareth for the first time since he'd left. It rang 6 times before going to voicemail, his cheerful, carefree message that ended with "leave something good." I waited for the beep, my voice shaking with rage I'd spent 48 hours suppressing. "Jareth, this is your mother. Your father is dying. Not sick, not unwell, dying. He has days, maybe hours. He keeps asking for you. He wants to tell you he's proud. But you're in Ibiza, aren't you? You're living your best life while your father drowns in his own body. Call me back. Or don't. I'm starting to understand exactly who you really are." I hung up and waited. The phone never rang. But 20 minutes later, he posted another photo, nightclub lights and beautiful people, the caption reading "No regrets, just memories." I stared at that post until my vision blurred with tears. Then I opened my laptop and typed 4 words into Google: "How to disinherit child." Have you ever had to make an impossible decision about family? When is enough finally enough? Let me know in the comments, and make sure you're subscribed, because what I discovered next changed everything, and when Jareth finally came home, he walked into a reality he never saw coming. The law office of Whitmore and Associates sat on a quiet street in downtown Naperville, far enough from the hospital that I could pretend, for just an hour, that my world wasn't ending. I'd found them through a late-night Google search, their specialty listed as estate planning and contested wills. The receptionist, a young woman with kind eyes named Tessa, offered me coffee I couldn't drink. My stomach had been in knots for 72 hours straight. "Mrs. Calloway? Mr. Whitmore will see you now," she said softly, like she knew I was coming here to burn my family down. David Whitmore was perhaps 60, with silver hair and the weary eyes of someone who'd witnessed every flavor of family betrayal. He listened without interruption as I laid it all out: Oswin's diagnosis, Jarrett's abandonment, the Instagram posts I'd printed and brought in a manila folder like evidence at a murder trial. When I finished, the silence stretched long enough that I wondered if he'd refuse to help me. Finally, he spoke. "Mrs. Calloway, I have to ask, are you absolutely certain about this? Disinheriting a child isn't something you can easily undo. The emotional consequences last forever, regardless of the legal ones." I pulled out my phone and showed him the latest post from Jarrett's Instagram: my son shirtless on a yacht, arms around two blonde women I'd never seen, his smile wider than I'd seen in years. "This was posted 3 hours ago," I said, my voice steady despite the rage boiling underneath. "My husband has been unresponsive since yesterday morning. He's never waking up again, Mr. Whitmore. And our son is living his best life in Ibiza, surrounded by strangers, like we don't even exist. So yes, I'm certain. I'm more certain about this than I've been about anything in my entire life." Mr. Whitmore nodded slowly and opened his laptop. "Illinois law is clear on this matter: you have every right to disinherit an adult child, but it must be explicitly stated in your will. You can't just leave them out, you must specifically declare your intention to exclude them. We'll need to draft a comprehensive document that outlines your wishes and, frankly, your reasoning. Courts look favorably on testators who provide clear justification for disinheritance, especially in cases involving abandonment or elder abuse. What you've described could certainly qualify as emotional abandonment during a critical medical crisis." We spent the next 2 hours going through every asset Oswin and I had accumulated over 52 years of marriage: our house in Wheaton, worth about $380,000, our retirement savings, nearly $400,000, Oswin's life insurance policy, $150,000, my smaller policy, $75,000. Together, our estate was worth just over $1 million. Money we'd saved by skipping vacations, driving used cars, eating leftovers. Also, Jarrett could have opportunities we'd never had. "And you want all of this redirected where?" Mr. Whitmore asked gently, his pen poised above the document. I'd spent the previous night researching, planning, making this decision while Oswin's ventilator breathed for him 3 miles away. "I want to establish the Oswin Calloway Memorial Scholarship Fund. It should benefit underprivileged students pursuing nursing degrees, people who actually care about helping others, about being there when families are suffering. People who understand that some things matter more than beach parties and Instagram likes. Can you make that happen?" Mr. Whitmore smiled for the first time since I'd arrived, something like respect flickering in his tired eyes. "Mrs. Calloway," he said quietly, "it would be my absolute honor to make that happen." He began typing, the sound of keys clicking like a countdown to Jarrett's reckoning. Outside the window, the March sun was setting over Illinois, and somewhere across the ocean, my son was probably ordering another round of drinks, completely unaware that his entire future had just been rewritten. Would you have done the same thing? Is this justice or revenge? Drop your honest opinion below and hit subscribe, because Jarrett's plane was about to land, and he had no idea what was waiting for him at home. Trust me, you don't want to miss what happens next. Oswin died on a Tuesday morning while I was signing the new will in Mr. Whitmore's office. I felt it happen, a sudden coldness in my chest, a certainty that settled over me like snow. My phone rang 30 seconds later, Patricia's voice breaking as she tried to tell me what I already knew. "Mrs. Calloway, I'm so sorry." He went peacefully, just slipped away. "We did everything we could." I thanked her mechanically, hung up, and finished signing my name on the document that would erase our son from our legacy. My hand didn't shake. Not even once. The drive back to the hospital felt like moving through water, everything slow and distorted and wrong. Patricia met me at the door, her face streaked with tears. She cried for my husband, tears our own son couldn't be bothered to shed. She walked me to room 304, where Oswin lay still and silent, the machines finally turned off, the endless beeping replaced by a silence so complete it hurt my ears. I sat beside him and took his cold hand, studying the face I'd loved for 52 years. He looked peaceful, finally free from pain. "I'm sorry Jareth never came," I whispered. "I'm sorry you died believing he would." I stayed with Oswin's body for 3 hours, unwilling to leave him alone in that sterile room. Nurses came and went quietly, giving me space to grieve. I called the funeral home, made arrangements with a voice that didn't sound like mine. I called our pastor, our neighbors, my sister in Ohio. I did not call Jareth. Let him find out when he lands, I thought bitterly. Let him check Instagram and realize Daddy's gone. Maybe he'll even feel something. Maybe. I checked his account one last time. He'd posted 45 minutes ago, a poolside video captioned "Living My Truth." I blocked him. I couldn't look anymore. I physically couldn't bear it. The funeral home came to collect Oswin's body at dusk. I watched them wheel him away, my husband of 52 years disappearing behind industrial doors, and felt the last piece of my old life die with him. Patricia hugged me tight before I left, whispering, "I'm so sorry your son didn't make it in time." I didn't correct her. I didn't tell her that Jareth could have made it, that he chose not to, that he valued cocktails and European nightclubs over his dying father. Some truths are too ugly to speak aloud. I just nodded and walked out into the parking lot, into a world without Oswin, into a life I didn't recognize. At home, the silence was deafening. Every room screamed Oswin's absence, his coffee mug on the counter, his reading glasses on the side table, his worn leather chair in the study where he'd spent 30 years doing crossword puzzles. I sat in that chair, breathing in the faint smell of his cologne, and finally let myself cry. Not quiet tears, but great heaving sobs that tore through my chest like shrapnel. I cried for my husband, for our wasted love, for the son we'd created who'd become a stranger. I cried until I had nothing left, until I was just an empty husk sitting in a dead man's chair. My phone buzzed at 8 p.m., a text message from an unknown number. "Mrs. Calloway, this is Ashlyn, Jareth's girlfriend. I saw the news about Mr. Calloway on Facebook and wanted to say I'm so sorry. Jareth doesn't know yet, his phone died and he's been using mine for photos. We're flying back tomorrow morning. He's going to be devastated." I stared at that message for 5 full minutes, rage building in my chest like a living thing. His phone died. He'd been out of contact for days because his phone died, not because of anything more important than battery life. And his girlfriend, this woman I'd met twice, knew about Oswin's death before my own son did. I typed back 4 words, "Tell him to hurry." Then I opened my laptop and began planning exactly what Jareth would find when he finally came home. The new will was already signed. The scholarship fund was being processed. But I wanted him to understand, truly understand, what he'd lost. What he'd thrown away. What his choices had cost him. I had 24 hours to prepare. It would be enough. What would you say to your child in this situation? Could you ever forgive abandonment like this? Comment below and subscribe, because when Jareth walked through that door the next day, he was walking into a truth that would destroy him. And I was ready. Jareth's rental car pulled into our driveway at 2 p.m. the next day, the March sun making everything look deceptively cheerful. I watched from the living room window as he climbed out, tanned and relaxed, wearing expensive sunglasses and a linen shirt that probably cost more than Oswin's hospital bills for a week. Ashlyn emerged from the passenger side, her face somber, her hand reaching for his. He shook it off, staring at our house like he was seeing it for the first time. Then he started walking toward the door, and I felt my heart turn to stone. I'd spent the morning preparing. Every surface in the living room was covered with photographs, Oswin in the hospital, machines breathing for him, his body wasting away while his son partied across an ocean. I'd printed Jareth's Instagram posts too, dozens of them, arranged chronologically alongside photos I'd taken of Oswin during those same exact moments. A split screen of betrayal, Jareth dancing in a nightclub at 9 p.m. on March 20th, Oswin coding at 9:07 p.m. that same night. Jareth toasting champagne at midnight, Oswin being resuscitated at 12:15 a.m. The visual evidence was devastating, undeniable, damning. I wanted my son to see exactly what his choices looked like. The front door opened. Jareth stepped inside, calling out, "Mom? Where are—" His voice died as his eyes swept the room, landing on the photographs, the timeline of destruction I'd created. His face went white. "What is this?" he whispered, but he knew. I could see him knowing, watching realization crash over him like a wave. "This is the truth," I said quietly from the doorway. "This is what you missed. This is what you chose beaches over. Every single moment you were living your best life, your father was dying. Look at them, Jareth. Really look." He stumbled forward, his legs shaky, grabbing the back of the couch for support. His eyes moved from photo to photo, Instagram post to hospital image, his face crumbling with each comparison. "Mom, I didn't know it was this bad. You said he was stable, you said." I said nothing, I interrupted, my voice cold as winter. "You never called to ask. Your phone died, according to Ashlyn. You couldn't be bothered to find a charger, to use your girlfriend's phone, to check in for 5 minutes. You just assumed everything was fine because that's what you wanted to believe." Ashlyn hovered in the doorway, tears streaming down her face, clearly understanding the magnitude of what was happening. Jareth moved to the timeline I'd created, his hands trembling as he touched one of the hospital photos, Oswin with tubes down his throat, his eyes closed, his chest rising only because machines forced it to. "When did he die?" Jareth's voice broke on the last word, the question barely audible. "Tuesday morning at 9:47 a.m. You were still in Ibiza. He died asking for you. His last words were, 'Where's my boy?' And I had to lie to him, Jareth. I had to tell a dying man that his son was coming, that his son cared, when we both know neither of those things was true." The silence that followed felt endless. Jareth collapsed onto the couch, his head in his hands, his shoulders shaking with sobs that sounded like they were being torn from his chest. "I'm sorry," he choked out between gasps. "God, Mom, I'm so sorry. I thought I had time. I thought he'd be okay. I didn't think, you didn't think," I agreed, standing over him like a judge delivering a sentence. "And now he's gone, and you don't get a second chance. You don't get to apologize to him. You don't get to say goodbye. You chose Ibiza, and this is the cost of that choice." I pulled an envelope from my pocket, the copy of the new will that Mr. Whitmore had given me. "And there's something else you need to know. Something about what your choices are going to cost you going forward. Open it." I dropped the envelope in his lap and watched my son's world end for the second time in 5 minutes. "Do you think Jareth deserves forgiveness? Or did he make his bed and now he has to lie in it? Tell me in the comments and make sure you subscribe, because when Jareth read what was in that envelope, his devastation reached a whole new level. You won't believe how this unfolds. Jareth's hands shook so badly he could barely open the envelope. I watched him struggle with the seal, his tanned fingers, still probably smelling like sunscreen and Mediterranean salt, unable to coordinate properly. When he finally extracted the document, his eyes scanned the first page, then went back to the top like he'd misread something. "What is this?" he asked, his voice small and confused. This says I'm not." "Mom, what is this?" His face had gone from white to gray, the healthy glow from his Ibiza vacation draining away like water. "That's your father's and my will," I said calmly, sitting in Oswin's leather chair, the one Jareth would never inherit now. The new version, signed and notarized 3 days ago. I had it drafted while you were posting sunset photos and nightclub selfies. While your father was dying, I was making sure your abandonment had permanent consequences. I watched him read, saw the exact moment he reached the disinheritance clause, saw his face crumble like paper. Section 4, Paragraph 2, I continued mercilessly. Complete disinheritance of biological son Jareth Michael Calloway due to willful abandonment during critical medical crisis and complete absence of filial duty or care. Jareth's legs gave out. He literally collapsed onto the floor, the will fluttering from his hands, his whole body shaking like he was having a seizure. "You're cutting me out?" His voice was barely a whisper, disbelieving. "You're cutting me out of everything?" "Mom, please, I made a mistake, I know I did, but you can't, this isn't what?" I interrupted, leaning forward. "Fair? Your father dying alone while you did body shots with strangers wasn't fair. Me spending 3 days in that hospital listening to machines breathe for my husband while our only child ignored my calls wasn't fair. This, Jareth, this is simply consequences. You're 41 years old. You made a choice. Now you get to live with what that choice cost you." Ashlyn rushed to his side, pulling him against her, shooting me a look of pure horror. "Mrs. Calloway, please," he didn't understand how serious it was. He thought he had more time. "You can't punish him forever for one mistake. I stood up, my voice rising for the first time. He ignored 23 phone calls. I left 17 voicemails. I sent text messages begging him to come home. And not once, not one single time, did he respond. Instead, he posted 57 times on Instagram. 57! I counted them, Ashlyn. 57 photos and videos of him having the time of his life while his father drowned in hospital room 304. I picked up the will and found the section I'd memorized. The entire estate, valued at approximately $1.03 million, will be used to establish the Oswin Calloway Memorial Scholarship Fund, benefiting underprivileged students pursuing nursing degrees. Because your father, Jareth, believed in people who actually take care of others. He believed in compassion, in duty, in showing up when it matters. All the things you apparently never learned despite us spending 41 years trying to teach you. I let the words sink in, watched them land like bullets. That money you were counting on? That inheritance you'd probably already spent in your head? It's going to strangers who understand what it means to care. Jareth looked up at me, his face streaked with tears and snot, looking younger than his 41 years, looking like the little boy who used to climb into my lap during thunderstorms. "Mom, please. I'll do anything. I'll make it right. Just don't do this. Dad wouldn't want this. He'd want us to be a family. Your father died wanting you." I shouted, all my controlled rage finally breaking free. "He died whispering your name, asking where you were, believing you'd walk through that door any second because I lied to him." I held his hand while he took his last breath, and I lied and said you were on your way. Do you understand what that did to me? What you forced me to do? You stole his peace, Jareth. You stole his last chance to see his son. And now you want to talk about what he'd want. I wiped my own eyes, refusing to let him see me completely break. The will is final. It's signed, notarized, and filed with the court. You can contest it if you want, but Mr. Whitmore assures me you'll lose. The evidence of your abandonment is overwhelming. So you have two choices: accept what you've done and move forward, or waste more money you don't have fighting a battle you cannot win. I turned toward the stairs, suddenly exhausted beyond anything I'd ever felt. The funeral is Saturday at 11 a.m. You're welcome to attend. After that, I need you out of this house. You have until Sunday evening. I didn't wait for his response. I climbed those stairs while my son sobbed on the floor below, and I felt absolutely nothing but emptiness and rage. Was this too harsh? Or exactly what he deserved? Let me know what you think and hit that subscribe button, because the funeral was coming, and what happened there shocked everyone who attended. Trust me, this story is far from over. Saturday arrived cold and gray, the kind of March morning that feels like the world is mourning alongside you. St. Catherine's Church filled slowly with people who'd actually loved Oswin, his bowling league friends, our neighbors, former co-workers from his 30 years at the electric company, nurses from the hospital who'd cried when he died. Over 200 people came to say goodbye to my husband. Jareth sat in the front pew beside me, separated by 3 feet of empty space that might as well have been the Grand Canyon. He hadn't spoken since Thursday, just moved through the house like a ghost, packing his things in silence while I pretended he didn't exist. Pastor Glenn delivered a beautiful eulogy about Oswin's kindness, his dedication to family, his quiet faith. I noticed he carefully avoided mentioning Jareth by name, referring only to those left behind to cherish his memory. Several people spoke, Oswin's best friend Marcus, who choked up talking about their fishing trips, our neighbor Delilah, who remembered how Oswin always shoveled her driveway without being asked, Patricia the nurse, who described his bravery and grace even as his body failed him. Not one person mentioned Jareth. Not one acknowledged his existence. The silence around my son was deliberate, brutal, and absolutely deserved. After the service, during the reception in the church basement, I watched Jareth try to navigate the room. People turned away from him, conversations dying when he approached, condolences offered to me while he stood invisible beside me. Word had spread, the way it does in small communities, everyone knew he'd been in Ibiza, knew he'd abandoned his dying father, knew about the disinheritance. Marcus actually walked away when Jareth tried to speak to him, leaving my son standing alone next to the coffee station. I felt no sympathy. I felt nothing but a cold satisfaction that the world could see him for what he truly was. Ashlyn tried to run interference, but she was fighting a losing battle. Mrs. Calloway, she cornered me by the dessert table, her voice desperate and low, this is destroying him. He knows what he did was wrong. He'll spend the rest of his life regretting it. But this public shaming, the will, cutting him off completely, it's cruel. He's your only child. Oswin wouldn't want this. He'd want you to forgive. I looked at this girl, barely 30 years old, trying to lecture me about my husband of 52 years. You don't know what Oswin would want, I said quietly but firmly. You met him twice. You didn't hold his hand while he drowned. You didn't watch him die asking for a son who chose European beaches over his father's deathbed. Don't you dare tell me about cruelty when you encouraged this trip. I saw your comment, Ashlyn, finally free from family drama. You think we were drama? Being a family was drama to you both? Then congratulations, you're both finally free. Permanently. She backed away, tears streaming, and I returned to accepting condolences from people who actually mattered. The burial was small, just close friends at Oak Hill Cemetery. We laid Oswin to rest next to his parents, under an old oak tree he'd always admired. The March wind scattered petals from the funeral flowers across his casket, and I thought about how beautiful he would have found that detail. Jareth stood apart from the group, separated by invisible walls of judgment and disgust. When Pastor Glenn invited people to place roses on the casket, Jareth stepped forward first. The look of pure hatred from Marcus made him stumble. He placed his rose with shaking hands and whispered something I couldn't hear. Probably an apology Oswin would never receive. Back at the house afterward, I found Jareth in his old bedroom, nearly packed. Boxes lined the walls, his childhood, his memories, his history with us reduced to cardboard and tape. I'll be gone by tomorrow morning, he said without looking at me, folding a shirt with mechanical precision. I found a studio apartment in Chicago. Month to month. It's all I can afford right now. He turned finally, his face ravaged by grief and shame. I know you hate me. I know I deserve it. But I want you to know that I loved Dad. I loved him so much, and I'll regret this every single day for the rest of my life. I hope someday you can believe that. I stood in the doorway, looking at this stranger wearing my son's face, and felt the last bit of maternal love inside me turn to ash. I believe you loved him, I said quietly. I just also know you loved yourself more. That's something you'll have to live with. Not me. You. I turned to leave, then stopped. The locks are being changed Monday morning. Don't come back without calling first. And Jareth? He looked up, hope flickering in his eyes. The scholarship fund goes live next month. Maybe check it out sometime. See where your inheritance is actually going, to people who understand that love means showing up. I left him there, surrounded by boxes and regrets, and closed the door on the son I used to have. Do children always deserve second chances? Or are some betrayals unforgivable? Share your thoughts below and subscribe, because life after the funeral took an unexpected turn, and what I discovered about Jareth changed everything one final time. Sunday morning, Jareth loaded the last box into his rental car while I watched from the kitchen window. He looked back at the house 3 times, like he was memorizing it, like he knew he'd never be welcome here again. When his car disappeared down the street, I felt relief wash over me, the relief of a tumor being removed, of poison leaving the body. I spent the rest of the day cleaning his room, erasing every trace of him, preparing to turn it into the sewing space I'd always wanted. Under his bed, pushed far back against the wall, I found a shoebox. Inside was everything I needed to understand exactly who my son had become. The box contained letters, dozens of them, handwritten by Oswin over the past 15 years. Letters Jareth had never opened. I recognized my husband's shaky handwriting immediately, the way his R's always leaned too far right, the way he always signed love, Dad with a little heart next to his name. I opened the first one, dated from Jareth's 30th birthday. Dear son, I know we don't talk as much as we used to, but I want you to know how proud I am of the man you've become. You're chasing your dreams in Chicago, building your career, living the life your mother and I sacrificed to give you. That's all a father could ask for. I love you more than words can express. My hands shook. Oswin had written to Jareth for 15 years, and our son had shoved every letter under his bed like junk mail. I read them all, sitting on the floor of his empty room, tears streaming down my face. Letter after letter of a father reaching out to a son who couldn't be bothered to reach back. Oswin wrote about his health problems starting 5 years ago, his first heart attack, his concerns about his deteriorating kidneys. The doctors say I need to slow down, but you know your old man, stubborn as they come. Just wanted you to know in case anything happens. Not trying to worry you, just want you informed. Call when you get a chance. We miss you. Jareth had never called. Never acknowledged these letters. Just shoved them away and went on living his selfish life. The last letter was dated January 15th, 6 weeks before Oswin's stroke. His handwriting was barely legible, shaky and weak. Jareth, I'm getting sicker. The doctors say it's serious this time. I don't want to burden you, but if something happens, please take care of your mother. She's the strongest woman I know, but she'll need you. She'll never admit it, but she'll need you. Promise me you won't leave her alone. Promise me family will mean something to you. I'm proud of you, son. Always have been, always will be. Love, Dad. Heartsuit. The paper was stained with what looked like tears. Oswin had cried while writing this. And Jareth had left it unopened, had probably kicked it under the bed without a second thought. I pressed the letter to my chest and sobbed like I hadn't sobbed since Oswin died. I called Mr. Whitmore that afternoon, my voice still raw from crying. I found something. Letters from Oswin to Jareth, dozens of them, unopened. He'd been trying to reach our son for years. He'd been telling him about his health, asking him to call, begging for connection. Jareth ignored all of it. Does this change anything legally? There was a long pause, then Mr. Whitmore's gentle voice. Mrs. Calloway, it doesn't change the will, that's already ironclad. But it does provide even more documentation of the pattern of neglect. If Jareth contests, which I doubt he will, this evidence would absolutely destroy any case he tried to make. Keep those letters safe. That night, I sat in Oswin's study and wrote my own letter, not to Jareth, but to the Scholarship Fund Board. I included copies of Oswin's letters, explained the full story of my son's abandonment, and made one request, that every scholarship recipient be required to write one letter per semester to an elderly or sick family member. Because my husband died reaching out to a son who wouldn't reach back, I wrote. And maybe, somehow, this can prevent another family from breaking the way ours did. Maybe these students can learn what my son never did, that love is action, not intention. That showing up matters. That some chances don't come twice. I sealed the envelope, addressed it to Mr. Whitmore's office, and felt something close to peace settle over me. Oswin's love hadn't been wasted. It would live on through strangers who actually understood its value. Through people who would show up, who would write back, who would care. And Jareth? Jareth would spend the rest of his life knowing he'd thrown away something precious that he could never get back. That seemed like exactly the right ending to me. Would you have contacted your son after finding those letters? Or was silence the right choice? Let me know in the comments and make sure you're subscribed, because months later, Jareth made one final attempt to fix what he'd broken. What happened next will shock you. 3 months passed. Spring turned into early summer, and I learned to live alone in the house Oswin and I had filled with 52 years of memories. I joined a grief support group at the church, started volunteering at the library on Tuesdays, and threw myself into the scholarship fund work. The Oswin Calloway Memorial Scholarship had received its nonprofit status in May, and we'd already selected our first 3 recipients, beautiful young people who wrote essays about caring for sick grandparents, about choosing nursing because they'd watched someone they loved suffer. Every essay made me cry and made me certain I'd made the right choice. These kids understood what Jareth never would. Then, on a humid Tuesday in June, Jareth showed up. I was gardening in the front yard, my arthritic knees screaming but my tomato plants finally thriving, when his car pulled into the driveway. He looked thinner, older somehow, his expensive clothes replaced with simple jeans and a faded t-shirt. He climbed out slowly, like he expected me to chase him away with the garden hose. "Mom," he called softly, standing at the edge of the driveway like it was a border he didn't dare cross. "Can we talk? Please? Just 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking." I stood up slowly, wiping dirt from my hands, and studied the man my son had become in 90 days of consequences. We sat on the porch, 3 feet of space between us on the wooden swing Oswin had built 30 years ago. Jareth's hands shook as he pulled out his phone, showing me his screen. "I've been going to therapy," he said quietly. 3 times a week. Trying to understand how I became, how I let myself become this person. And I found these. He scrolled through his photos, screenshots of his Ibiza Instagram posts, but with annotations now. Timestamps matched against what he'd learned were the exact moments of Oswin's crisis. He'd documented his own betrayal, created his own evidence of abandonment. I did this to myself. I look at these and I can't believe I was that person. I can't believe I chose this over Dad. I said nothing, just let him talk, watching a robin build a nest in the oak tree Oswin used to sit under. "I lost my job," Jareth continued, his voice cracking. Found out the partners saw my Instagram from Ibiza, put the timeline together when Dad's obituary ran in the paper. They said they couldn't trust someone with such poor judgment representing their firm. Ashlyn left me too. Said she couldn't be with someone who'd abandoned their dying father. I'm broke, Mom. I'm living in a studio with 3 other guys, working temp jobs, trying to figure out who I am without all the things I thought defined me. He wiped his eyes roughly. And I know I deserve all of it. Every single consequence. But I'm here because I found Dad's letters. You left them on my bed before I moved out. I finally read them. All of them. He pulled out the box, the same shoebox I'd found, but worn now, like he'd been carrying it everywhere. I read them over and over. I see who Dad was trying to be for me, who I was too blind and selfish to appreciate. And I know I can never make it right. I know he's gone and I lost my chance forever. But you're still here, Mom. You're still here, and I'm begging, for a chance to try to be the son I should have been. Not for the money, not for the will. I know that's gone and I accept it. I don't want to lose you too. I can't lose both of you because of my selfishness. The silence stretched long enough that a car drove past, someone walking their dog waved at me, the whole world kept spinning while I decided whether to let my son back into my life. I thought about Oswin, about the letters he'd written, about his last words asking where his boy was. I thought about the scholarship students who'd actually understand the value of family. I thought about 3 months of peace without Jareth's presence, 3 months of learning to exist without his betrayal staring me in the face daily. I appreciate you coming here, I finally said, my voice measured and careful. I appreciate the therapy, the self-awareness, the accountability. But appreciation isn't forgiveness, Jareth. And I don't know if I have forgiveness left in me. He nodded, tears streaming freely now. I understand. I do. But can I try? Can I show up, even if you don't forgive me? Can I mow your lawn, fix things around the house, just be present the way I should have been? Not for me, but for Dad? To honor what he tried to teach me that I was too stupid to learn? I looked at this broken man, this son I'd created and raised and loved and lost, and felt something crack in the armor I'd built around my heart. Not forgiveness, not yet, maybe not ever. But something softer than the rage I'd carried for months. You can mow the lawn on Saturdays, I said quietly. You can help with house maintenance. But you don't come inside unless I invite you. You don't assume anything. You show up, you do the work, and you leave. And maybe, eventually, if you prove you've actually changed, we can talk about something more. But Jareth? I looked him dead in the eyes. You will never, ever get another chance like the one you wasted with your father. Do you understand? This is it. You fail again, you're gone permanently. No third chances. No redemption arcs. Just gone. He nodded, his whole body shaking with relief and grief. Thank you, Mom. I won't waste it. I promise you, I won't waste it. I stood up and walked back to my garden, leaving him sitting on the swing alone. Time would tell if he meant it. Time would tell if people could actually change. But for the first time since Oswin died, I felt something other than rage and emptiness. I felt possibility, fragile and terrifying, but real. Should she have given him another chance? Or was this a mistake? Tell me what you would have done in the comments, and hit subscribe, because the final chapter reveals what happened next, and whether Jareth finally became the son Oswin always believed he could be. A year passed. Jareth showed up every Saturday at 8 a.m., exactly as he'd promised. He mowed the lawn through the summer, raked leaves in the fall, shoveled snow through the brutal Illinois winter, and helped me plant new flower beds that spring. He never asked to come inside for the first 6 months. Never expected conversation beyond what was necessary. He just worked, quietly and thoroughly, fixing the things Oswin would have fixed if he'd lived. Slowly, painfully slowly, I began to let my guard down. Not forgiveness, I still wasn't sure I had that in me, but something like tentative trust. The Oswin Callaway Memorial Scholarship awarded its first full year of scholarships in September, 12 students total, studying nursing at colleges across Illinois. Every one of them wrote letters to elderly or sick family members as part of their scholarship requirements. I received copies of some of those letters, and they were beautiful, full of love and presence and the kind of care Jareth had failed to show. One girl, Maribel, wrote to her grandfather with Parkinson's every single week, describing her classes, asking his advice, telling him she loved him. "Because I almost lost him before I started nursing school," she wrote in her scholarship essay. And I realized that time isn't guaranteed. That showing up matters. That love is action. Reading her words felt like vindication and grief mixed together, proof that something good had emerged from our family's destruction. In November, on what would have been Oswin's 79th birthday, I finally invited Jareth inside. We sat in the living room, the same room where I'd confronted him with the timeline of his betrayal, where his world had ended almost 2 years earlier. He looked around like seeing a museum of his own failure. "I went to Dad's grave this morning," he said quietly. "Brought flowers, like I do every week now. Talked to him like you said I should. Told him about my new job. I'm doing social work now, helping families navigate medical crises. Figured if I couldn't show up for my own family, maybe I could help other people show up for theirs. Seems like the least I could do." I reached beside my chair and pulled out a letter, one I'd written months ago but hadn't been ready to give him until now. "Before your father died, in the last moments when he could still speak, he said something I haven't told you." Jareth's face went pale. "He said, tell Jareth I forgive him. Tell him I love him. Tell him it's never too late to become who you're meant to be." That was a lie. Oswin's last words had been asking where Jareth was. But I'd spent a year watching my son show up, watching him change, watching him become someone Oswin would have been proud of. And I knew, deep in my soul, that if Oswin had lived long enough to see this version of Jareth, those would have been his exact words. Jareth collapsed, sobbing like I hadn't seen him sob since the funeral. I moved beside him on the couch and held him, this son I'd lost and was slowly, carefully reclaiming. "The world doesn't change," I said firmly, even as I held him. "The scholarship fund is Oswin's legacy, and it's doing exactly what it should. But you, Jareth, you're becoming your own legacy. A different one. One built on actually showing up, on choosing people over pleasure, on understanding that love is action. That's worth more than any inheritance could ever be." He looked up at me, his face ravaged but somehow lighter than I'd seen it in years. Am I your son again?" he asked, his voice small and uncertain and achingly young. I wiped his tears with the same hands that had wiped them when he was 5 years old and had fallen off his bike. "You never stopped being my son," I said, surprised to find I meant it. "You stopped being someone I recognized, someone I could trust. But this past year, you've been finding your way back. Not to who you were, that person is gone and good riddance. But to who you could be. Who your father always believed you were underneath all the selfishness and ego." I squeezed his hand. "So yes, you're my son. You're my son who made terrible choices and faced terrible consequences and is doing the hard work of becoming better. That's enough. For now, that's enough." We sat together in the house Oswin built, in the silence that felt less empty than it used to, and I thought about the scholarship students writing letters to their loved ones. About Jareth showing up every Saturday for a year. About consequences and redemption, justice and mercy, rage and forgiveness. About how sometimes the worst moments of our lives crack us open enough to let something better grow in the wreckage. Outside, the November sun was setting over Illinois, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. Inside, a mother and son were finding their way back to each other, not through forgetting what was broken, but through the slow, painful work of building something new from the pieces. Oswin was gone, and that would always be a wound that never fully healed. But his legacy lived on, in scholarships for students who understood that showing up mattered, and in a son who'd finally learned the same lesson, even if it came too late to tell his father. It wasn't the ending I'd imagined when I stood in that hospital parking lot listening to Jareth's voicemail about Ibiza. But it was an ending I could live with. And sometimes, that's all any of us can ask for, an ending we can live with, and the strength to keep showing up for the people we love while we still have time. This story proves that consequences matter, but so do second chances when they're truly earned. What do you think? Did Jareth deserve this ending? Could you have forgiven him? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story touched your heart, hit that subscribe button and share it with someone who needs to hear that it's never too late to show up for the people you love. Thank you for listening to my story. And please, call your parents. Visit your family. Don't wait until it's too late to realize what matters most. Life is short. Make it count.